I'm reminded of the phrase "up the blades" this morning, because the blades are anything but up. They're going nowhere in an upward fashion. Sheffield United losing 6-0 at home to Arsenal. But the stats tell their own story, Simon. Rock bottom. Sheffield United's last 4 Premier League home games, an aggregate loss of 21-2. Sheffield United have won 3 from 27 played. They've lost 20. They sit bottom of the Premier League. And Chris Wilder spoke afterwards, and it's got us thinking.
What you'll notice and what you'll see, and maybe you might see a little bit more now, is the introduction of the younger players as well, because I thought we were better. I know the game's gone, and I know Saka comes off and other things, they drop down a level, but, that might be a route. It's been a painful season. It has been a real painful season. There's a lot of broken and damaged players out there. This is what the league can do to you, especially when you're off of it and they're on it, and you have to try and close that gap somehow, and when you don't close that gap, they make the gap look huge. So, yeah, there's some decisions to be made, of course. I've talked about, there's a lot of other things that are getting reviewed at this particular time for us to get back. The supporters love the football club. I totally understand the supporters that left when they did. We're all hurting at the moment, every one of us. We have to meet, coaches have got to get together, we've got to see what direction we're going to go in between now and the end of the season. But, we can't have this as just our stock home performance and home result, because, it's just totally unacceptable for them as supporters who love the club and me as manager and leader.
Simon, the last thing he would want to do post-match is to face up to the media, front up, and give his reasons as to why that came about last night and where Sheffield United find themselves right now. But his choice of words in there, Chris, will he think later? Yeah, I'm not so sure I got that right. There are a lot of broken and damaged players out there because this is what the league can do to you. No, this is what they've done to themselves, is it not?
Yeah, I mean, you have to give some scenarios regarding Sheffield United that they didn't help themselves at the beginning of the season. There is, a club that wanted to be sold, an owner that doesn't seem to be invested in the club anymore, and some of their best players being sold. In Sanderberg being sold and so on and so forth. So they didn't help themselves, did they? They didn't give themselves an opportunity to be successful as a result of that. But there's a part of me that, if I was mean-spirited, would say it couldn't happen to a nicer fella. But the reality of it is, and I'm not being mean-spirited, so I wouldn't say it.
Why have you got this thing about Wilder?
Because I just don't like what he represents in football management, and that's my view. And I've not got anything. I've not seen anything from him in his managerial career besides his initial assault upon the Premier League, where I thought he was brilliant and a breath of fresh air and everything that football management should be about. No apologies for being in there. We're here because we merit to be there, and all that sort of stuff. What I see from him now is like a cuckoo standing around waiting for the managers to fall over so he can jump in their jobs. Maybe his mate Paul Heckingbottom might have something to say about how good a friend he thinks he is. I don't know. Maybe we'll see. But the thing about Chris Wilder is that he's supposed to have gone in there and given them the ability to overcome adversity. What a pathetic, snivelling statement that there's broken the players. What about adversity? This is what you've got. Your supporters. I'm a great believer that supporters and fans should stay and watch their team. And the key term is supporters. But you've got to give them something to support. So this idea that it was streaming out of the ground after 20 minutes, I'm not surprised, because you can't play the way they're playing at this moment in time. Teams like Arsenal can do this to you, but they've had it done to them on several occasions now, and that's about the culture of the club. He was brought in to make it better. I don't look at Sheffield United's team and think, man for man, that Luton have got a much better side there. I know Russ Barkley's setting the house on fire right now, and it could have gone either way that way. But I don't look at Luton and go, well, you've got much better players with much better culture, and they got the same challenges.
So what have they got that Sheffield United don't have?
Well, a better manager, in my view, and a more galvanised squad of players, which is the manager's responsibility.
You see, you made a very good point earlier on, though, Simon. Echoing in all of their ears were Prince Abdullah's comments at the end of last season as they headed to the Premier League. And remember what he told me up in Covent Garden.
I think the last 2 years has been really stressful, not to myself, but also to my family, to my daughters, to my sons. Living like game by game, result by result. It really takes a lot out of you, and I feel tired, I feel exhausted, I feel burned out. I feel that I need to get a break. I told you, and we're on record now, and people in the future may hear this. If I get out of Sheffield United, and even in the future by another club, I will always be a Sheffield United fan. You can count on that. It got in my heart now. My intention is to sell, but it's not guaranteed yet.
See, are we now witnessing the results of a disengaged owner?
Well, yeah, of course you are, because what you're basically doing is saying that I mean, come on now. You got relegated, you bounced straight back up again. You haven't had it that hard. Try spending several years in the Championship. Try owning a football club that you don't get the success from that lots of other owners have had to deal with. Look at Steve Lansdowne at Bristol City. Whether I like him or not, he's been at Bristol City forever and a day, pumping tens of millions of quid and had no upside.
Yeah.
So quit that whining.
That's true.
The bottom line is...
He threw you out of a boardroom, didn't he?
No, I threw a cup of coffee at him in a boardroom.
Oh, right, sorry.
But that's a different discussion.
That's better.
But the principle of what he said there and the actions that follow it, because then you sell your best players when you go up to the league and you're not invested that heavily and your only answer is to go back to something that was evidently broken first time round. Heckingbottom may well have had to go, who knows, right? But he went back to something that had been broken previously and been broken by the manager's attitude.
Yes, yeah.
But this owner has not set the pattern. That was a day, I'm telling you now, I don't care how disenfranchised you were. And I was disenfranchised in 2004 when we got promoted. But when we got promoted to the Premier League, I was re-energised. That owner was walking around like, woe is me. You've got the keys to the safe by getting into the Premier League.
Just gone up.
So he sets the blueprint. Then ultimately Sheffield United have gone up. They were competitive and they were compact for a period of time. And now they're just a joke. And I feel sorry for their fans because their fans are... Sheffield United was a club that whenever we played them was a team under Warnock that I always felt that if you could beat Sheffield United, you had something about you.
Yeah.
And when we did eventually beat them at Bramall Lane once upon a time, we got promoted that season. And there was always this feeling of Sheffield United were a club of substance. Right now, they're a little bit of embarrassment to themselves. Their players, their managers saying that they're broken and can't overcome adversity, I think is pathetic. I do think it's pathetic. I think you need to have some substance and some backbone. And he's building a ready-made excuse in there now. I'll play the kids. Oh, right, OK. So the senior pros can't cope with it. So what you're going to do is expose the kids to it now, are you? Oh, that'll be helpful in their development, won't it? So when they start getting smashed, his idea is that you get around this by not making players be accountable and having substance.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. In any other walk of life, whether I like Chris Wilder or I don't, this guy should be getting the sack. The performances are poor.
Wilder should be getting the sack.
Well, how can you make a case for him not?
He's only just get the job again.
Well, how can you make a case for him not? If you judge football by the standards that other people judge it, which is when managers come in and the results are so bad, why would he be immune from that conversation? Whether his owner is in part complicit, which I think he absolutely is, I think the club deserves a little bit better than this. And if you're going to go out swinging.
Mm. Well, they certainly didn't do that last night in a big way. They went down, and they went down badly last night. And many Sheffield United fans left after about 15, 16 minutes. I mean, were you one of them? Did you give up on your team that soon into the 90 minutes of the game? 03717 223344. If you did, come on and tell us why. There's a Sheffield United fan, Sam. Sheffield United, I'm afraid, are a joke at this point in time. Jordan is 100% correct. That must be you.
That must be me.
But for me, you cannot sack Chris Wilder because it's not his team. You've got to give him at least another year in the Championship. Get rid of the dead weight that's around him. Start afresh next year and let's try again. I mean, there's a bit of sense in that, to be honest,
Possibly.
Simon.
I mean, in fairness to my observations, there has been some results that he's gotten. I mean, he's got 8 points out of 13 games, which is not the solution that they were looking for. And he's got results. He's beaten Luton, hasn't he? They made a fist of it against Palace in a game that they were competitive in, and they got a result against Aston Villa when Aston Villa were looking to go top of the league. But in recent times and this recent run of form and these observations, there are similar observations because he went after the players at Watford, didn't he, when he couldn't quite get from them what he wanted last season, and so on and so forth. I don't think it's good enough, and I think that the response from him after the game is poor. But then again, it's after the game. You just had your head handed to you. It's embarrassing.
Yeah.
What happened out there yesterday. And it's not the first time, and it won't be the last time, I suspect.
Well, I was watching it last night, and I thought, when I switch it back on, it could be 10. That was the way it was going, but it ended up 6, and Sheffield United fans this morning have got to suck it up. The ones who stayed, that is. Sheffield United, do you yearn for life back in the Championship? It's a horrible question, but it's one that I would think is pretty realistic this morning. Phil, good morning. You're a big Blades fan. Were you there last night? Did you leave early?
So I left just before half time. My reason for doing that is not because, I'm a half supporter or anything like that. There's no reason behind it other than the fact that I don't want to see my team fail. We're at a stage in the season now where, granted, we are playing Arsenal, but, we can have a bit more of a go than what we did last night. Heads went down after the second goal. And, I think we're better than that as a team and as a club, and I don't want to watch that as a supporter.
Phil, I want your take on this. What about Chris Wilder's comments post-match? There are a lot of broken and damaged players out there because this is what the league can do to you. What do you make of that, Phil?
I mean, it's one of those. We've got a championship team, so if going into the Premier League with a championship team, there's only so far we can go. I know we've done it before. I think we got a tad lucky. I don't think the Premier League were expecting us to play like we did when we went up with Chris Wilder before. Whereas this time, I think, they sort of know what we're about and we don't have the drive and desire this season. That the players are broken after the results that we've got, and there's nothing more that can be said. I'd say I agree with him, to be honest. That's sort of investment and stuff like that.
It's Bournemouth next in the South Coast. Will you travel, Phil?
No, I'll go with my granddad. He doesn't really have the legs for it. I'm very much a home supporter.
Right.
But even still, to go down to Bournemouth and expect a result with the way that we're playing at the moment, it's a big unlikely.
Ask. Sure.
But we're hopeful. I think that's what we are as a fan base. We're hopeful, and I think it's evident what's going to happen. We've just got to hope that next season we put a bit of money into the players and into the club, and we can go a bit further.
Phil, appreciate your time and your call. James, good morning. Sheffield United fan. Are you hopeful? I don't know what hopeful means, but are you hopeful?
Not at all. Good morning. Good morning, all.
Morning.
Not at all. Like Phil, I'm absolutely distraught at seeing our team capitulate like this. And going back to Simon's comments, Chris Wilder's post-match comments, whether it's right or wrong, he's a fan like us. He's a real passionate fan. So he's going to be more dramatic after the match than most managers. He wasn't composed, but that's the way he's a very emotional person. I don't blame Chris Wilder for this. I didn't blame Paul Beckenbottom for this. You get promoted for the Championship and you weaken your squad. You've also got a situation at the end of this season, you've got so many players out of contract. It's not a case of rebuilding, it's a case of building. And my fear is we'll be bottom end Championship next season.
Oof. And what about, I mean, you heard Prince Abdullah speak to me in Covent Garden in London at the end of last season and saying, it's just got on top of me. I need to spend more time with my family. So with all due respect to everybody, I'm out of here. Well, he's not out of there. He's still there.
He's not out of here.
No.
I mean, if that is the case, I feel for him. I'm sure it is very, very stressful. But, he's been very cute as the Prince because he's gone on a couple of the fans' forums, YouTube channels, thinking he can get the fans on side. The fans, to be honest with you, have been so apathetic. They're having their bellies tickled at the moment because there's none of this, what's happening, we want our club back. There's nothing. You see the fans, streaming out last night. I will be going to Bournemouth. I'm actually cycling to Bournemouth. I'm doing that for a local hospital, a children's hospital.
Oh, brilliant.
So I'll be at
Well
Bournemouth.
done, James. Well
I'll
done.
carry on following my team.
Well done.
But the Prince has got to go. He's got to sell. I don't know what he's asking for the club. It's probably too much. That's diminishing every hour. He got the club for a steal in the first place because of the legal ranklings with Kevin McCabe. But I think most fans are coming around to the opinion now, this owner, if he's feeling that way, he's got to go.
Simon, do you sympathise with James there?
Yeah.
And regards the ownership?
Yeah. I mean, look, I don't think, with due respect to Kevin, he was pulling up trees for a period of time and he did a deal with the Prince. That was the deal that he did, and ultimately didn't like it and tried to renege on it and couldn't do that. I mean, Sheffield United have spent £58 million on players in this in the promotion season, i.e., what they bought in the first window, and they sold about 25 million. So their net spend has been 33 million quid. I don't think that keeps you in the league, but what it does do is it gives you. I know they've lost Sander Berg, but they brought a decent player in, and Christian Hammer, who's not a bad player, and a few other players. I think that Sheffield United should be looking more competitive. I don't think Luton have spent any money. The two sides, to me, are comparable. Both of them were relegation candidates, but it's about how you get relegated. It's not about whether you're getting relegated. And Sheffield United are going down with a degree of embarrassment to their fans, and I don't think that's right. I think they should be dying in their boots.
What do you think of some of the fans chucking it after 16 minutes?
It's a balancing act, isn't it? I'm always in the camp of saying that supporters are supposed to support, but you've got to give them something to support. There is an idea that, and Northern fans tend to be very invested in their teams, very committed behind their teams. And I'm not diminishing the South, but there's lots of other things going on in the South.
Right.
But Northern fans are the strongest fans in my view. And so if they're walking out, it's because they don't want to watch what they're being served up. And that's not just because they're not accepting defeats. It's because the manner of which the team is getting beaten.
John, do you fall into that category? Sheffield United fan, you did not want to watch any more of what you were watching.
Good morning, Jim. Good morning, Simon. We travel up from Bolton to the games. I've been a season ticket holder now for over 20 years. It's the first time I've ever walked out the stadium at that time. It was just diabolical. I mean, that was the only word for it. I mean, there's probably a lot of people who'll say, you shouldn't have done that. But I mean, it's just been so a gut-wrenching season, to be quite honest with you. And, the only terrible downside was we ended up going round to the sister-in-laws. So I mean, it wasn't the best swap, really.
Out the frying pan into the fire, there, John. Are you looking forward to life in the Championship?
To be honest with you, I actually agree with a lot of what has been said. I honestly think that it'll be a massive struggle. And the overall feeling is that, potentially we could end up in League One in the next couple of years. But
but didn't you? But with respect, John, didn't you guys think that you were going to struggle last time round, and when you got relegated last time, and Heckingbottom did a really good job, and there wasn't a lot of resource, and you weren't given a lot of money, and yet you managed to get yourself together and you get yourself promoted.
He did, Simon. I couldn't agree more with that sentiment, and I think that was why, Paul should have been left with the reins. He's took the side up, and if we were to go down, I think he would have been, top of the list to stabilise the club. What we're in now is with Chris Wilder coming back in. I don't really understand why it's been done, and to be honest with you, I think it will cause more trouble than it's worth in the long run, particularly at the end of the season.
Okay, John. Tell me this, you didn't walk out the sister-in-laws early, did you?
No, but she actually had the match on, so I mean, it was...
I couldn't get away.
I wish it just drove home, really.
Torture all round. John, thanks for the call. A lot to be done at Sheffield United.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the TalkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. TalkSPORT.